listening to Dallas Theological Seminary's Chapel Podcast.
Let me just give you a few words about Dr. Kreider. He identifies his motivations as his passion for the triune God and his desire to help others respond to divine revelation in spirit and in truth. And prior to coming to DTS, he directed Christian education and pastored a church over in Cedar Hill, Texas. He's married to Janice. They have 2 children. And Dr. Kreider's research interests include Jonathan Edwards and theological method and our eschatological hope. He enjoys pugs, bold coffee, good music, including Bono and YouTube. And I'm going to ask that he come now and share what God has given to him. Let's welcome Dr. Kreider.
Thanks for being here today. And if you came today intending to hear my message about God's grace to the son of a Moabite, that will not be my message today. Hopefully I'll have another opportunity sometime, someplace to deliver that message. I have a different message today, and I could tell you it's been laid upon my heart and all of that stuff, but there's a story I want to tell you because it's deeply impacted my life. A couple of years ago, 2008, in his album Troubadour, George Strait sang a song by Rodney Clawson, Monty Criswell, and Wade Kirby called I Saw God Today, in which the songwriter describes leaving the hospital and walking down the street and seeing a flower grow up through a crack in the sidewalk. And he says, I saw God today. And he sees a young couple walking hand in hand, and he says, I saw God today. And he returns to the hospital and sees the birth of his newborn daughter. And he says, I saw God today. I saw God last Thursday. I met Jesus, and she changed my life. At least it is my hope that I will not forget her. I will not forget that day. I will not forget that experience. My son last Tuesday night was up on my father's roof. I was up there too. That's a miracle in itself. And we were working, repairing a section of his roof that my nephew had not had time to complete. And we spent a couple hours in the morning working on the roof. We had taken a break during the day. We're back up at night working on the roof. And that was about the middle of the roof. My son was on the edge at the high point of the roof, about 20 feet. And I saw out of the corner of my eye him move. I turned my head, and he was gone. Heard a thud, and Michael screamed. Among other things, he screamed, where I can't breathe, I can't move. As fast as we could, we got over to him. Thankfully, he was able to move his fingers, and when I touched his foot, he said he could feel that. We called the ambulance. He was taken to the hospital, to the emergency room. They did a CAT scan. The doctor came in and gave us the news that he had 2 broken vertebrae. One of which is a minimally displaced right anterior lateral L1 fracture, which he said will heal. We don't have to do anything for that. I'm smart enough to know that there was a part 2 coming. And part 2 is that he has an L3 burst fracture. And he says that will require surgery, will require us to go in and put screws and fuse the bones together, and we'll schedule your son for surgery first thing in the morning. I said, okay. And so what will that entail? What will the recovery be like? He said he'll spend 2 days in the hospital and then a couple of weeks recuperating at home. Within a couple of months, he'll be able to begin activity, and within a year, he'll be fully recovered. So that sounds good, but you realize the home is in Texas. He said that changes things. He's not going to travel anytime soon. But he said in the long term, he'll be fine. My son, about that time, says out loud, I see the tears welling up in his eyes. He says, but in the short term, that means no marching this fall, no drumline, the doctor said. Yep. He took him to the surgical ICU, largely so that he could be, I've read the report, largely so that he could be constantly evaluated, that they could every hour or so do neurological tests to make sure that that he didn't lose sensation and that there weren't further injuries. The next morning, we got what was encouraging news, that there's a possibility that they would treat him not with surgery, but with a brace. So they ordered a brace for him, which is really good news for anyone, particularly for an 18-year-old who doesn't need a lifetime of back surgery problems. He ordered a brace for him. Later that day, did an x-ray, which was incredibly painful to have him sit up, and they did an x-ray to make sure the bones were not moving, and returned him to ICU, where he stayed until Friday. Michael observed regularly over those first couple of days, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Wednesday night, nurses that worked 12-hour shifts. He observed over and over again the kind of, how much he appreciated the care he was receiving. He said, these nurses are incredible. They have been very kind and compassionate and gentle and quiet, which was important to him. They've been incredible. He said, I couldn't have had better care. Thursday morning, we were sitting in the room with him. We spent the entire time, except for 2 quick trips to take a shower, separated by a couple of days. Jan and I are both sitting in the room. She's in one side of him in a chair. I'm on the other side of the room. He's laying in bed, dozing in and out. And the door opens. It's a sliding glass door. It's flung open. There's a curtain across it. It's flipped open. The lights go on, and in comes this woman who announces her presence with loud, boisterous enthusiasm. She turns on the light. She runs over to the windows, and she opens the blinds. We looked at each other, and I know we all thought exactly the same thing. We thought exactly what Michael put into words when she left the room. This is going to be a long day. Quiet, calm, gentle, slow, not Lori. Lori was loud, brisk and brusque and boisterous. And some might even use another B word for her. She was bossy. She announced her name. She asked our names. Loud. Did I mention she was loud? She walked over to the board. She wrote her name, put the date. Loud. She asked Michael how his pain was. He gave the response he always did. It's about a 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. And she said, here's what we're going to do today. We're going to manage your pain. She wrote that on the board. And I wanted to say, and nobody else has had that as a goal? And the second thing we're going to do, she says, we're going to get you out of bed. And she wrote on the board, OOB, question mark. Oh, my goodness. She left. We all breathed a sigh of relief. Michael asked to have the lights turned back off again and to close the blinds so it would be a little darker. She came back in an hour later and checked him. And as the day unfolded, we watched her. As the day unfolded, she began to relax a little bit. She began to be a little less boisterous and brisk and brusque. And she began to spend a little more time with Michael. Everybody who knows Michael falls in love with him. He's the quintessential people person. He got that from his mom. I'm serious. I'm serious. She got him out of bed. She allowed us to stay in the room and to watch as she got him out of bed. It was a great gift, and I realized how great a gift it was when the next nurse came on and kicked us out of the room. She put us back in the room. As difficult as it is to see my son in pain, there was something about seeing him able to move and fight through that pain. I've learned a lot over the last week about courage and character, those kind of things from my son. She sat up in the chair. It was about 5 o'clock or so. She came in about an hour later and asked if he wanted to lay back in bed. He said, "No, I think I'll stay out here for a little while." She was a little surprised by that. She came back at about 10 of 7. They're on 12-hour shifts, 7 to 7. She came in to check on him one last time before she went home, and she wanted to spend a little time thanking him, talking to him a little bit. And she observed as she was talking to him that as she moved the pillow behind him, she said, "This is all wet." She said, "You really sweat." And Michael said, "Yeah." She said, "There's a note in your file that you received a sponge bath yesterday." He said, "Well, actually, the nurse washed my face and neck. My mom washed my hands." Remember, he was roofing. That's the extent of the cleaning to this point in time. And I saw her look up at the clock, and she said, I'll get some water, and I'll wash your face." And she leaned him forward, and she washed his back and his arms. It's now well after 7 o'clock. I'm standing off to the side working on my computer. I finally had internet access after a week in rural Pennsylvania with no internet. The hospital had internet access. And so I'm just kind of checking my email, updating my Facebook status, and I look over and I see this woman on her knees. And she observes, your feet really stink. And Michael said, "Yeah, we all stink because we haven't had baths in days. My mom and dad stink too." It was true. I watched this stranger, this woman I had never met, who had never met my son, who doesn't know Jesus, on her hands and knees, washing his feet. She did not hurry. She did not move quickly. They were clean when she was finished. And then she took lotion. She massaged his feet and put lotion on them. I saw Jesus wash my son's feet. And I stood there thinking, so why didn't I do that? And the answer is because I never thought about it. I literally never thought of it. But Lori did. And she washed his feet. In John chapter 13, John says, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he said. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, You'll be blessed if you do them. Thursday afternoon in Hershey, Pennsylvania, I met Jesus. And I hope not to forget, I hope she changed my life. I want to be like Jesus. I want to be like Lori. And the more I've reflected on that, the more I want to be like her. But as I've thought on it even more over the last couple of days, I realize that the truth is, that's really not what I want. Here's what I want. I want you to think I'm like Jesus. I want you to think I'm like Lori. Because if I really did want to be like Jesus, that means I have to do something. I have to change. And I have to do things like Lori did. Get down and wash dirty, stinky, smelly, calloused feet. And I don't want to do that. I would much rather that you think I want to do that.